The St. Louis Cardinals and the Colorado Rockies just wrapped up their 3-game set. One team looked hungry, while the other's manager described Game 3 as our worst game we've played all year. This is a Locked on Cardinals, Locked on Rockies crossover.
You are Locked on MLB crossover, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, baseball fans. I'm JD Hafford, and I am the host for Locked on Cardinals. We've got Paul Holden with me, host of Locked on Rockies. We are part of the Locked on Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We want to thank those of you who make Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Rockies your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, so subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts. You can also find us in places like YouTube, as well as on TikTok, Instagram, X. We're all over the place. We're going to jump right into this series. Paul, good to talk to you again. It took forever for our two teams to finally play each other, so I don't get to have a lot of back and forth with Paul. But finally, we got to take the field of battle against each other in Colorado. And the white-hot Rockies, how many times have we gotten to say that this year, just shut down the Cardinals on Wednesday by a score of 6-0 and take the series 2-3. That is now back-to-back series wins for your boys. Don't hold back, Paul. How are you feeling about what you saw today, specifically from new Cy Young candidate Tanner Gordon?
I mean, let's start there. The young players showed up in this series for the Colorado Rockies. It was not only was it just Tanner Gordon, but Bradley Blaylock threw a nice gem in game number 2 of this series as well. Adiel Amador, young guy for the Rockies there at second base. He came up with some big hits. Mickey Moniak, Tyler Freeman returns and has impacts. We saw Ryan McMahon hit a couple of bombs and be impactful as well throughout that. But the Rockies in this series went really heavy on their inexperienced players or younger players, and they performed. And they finally, in back-to-back series, made Coors Field uncomfortable for the opposition. I think one of the things that I talked a lot about on my show previewing this series, I was kind of surprised to see how much the Cardinals starters, at least in this series, including one of them that ended up being DFA'd there, weren't all that great. The Rockies have gone up against a lot of good teams, a lot of great pitching staffs, and sometimes they just run into a gauntlet of you're getting the best, the constant best from other teams mixed with an offense that hasn't really performed. So the Rockies, when they were faced with pitchers that weren't as, maybe hitting as the levels that they're supposed to, or kind of when you're looking at it, not the best starting rotations that the Rockies have seen this year, they took advantage and they finally made Coors Field uncomfortable for the opposition, something that they have struggled to do so this year. This is the series before this was the first home series win for the Colorado Rockies in 2025, and this is now the first time the Rockies have won back-to-back series in 2025. So there's a lot to be excited about, especially in the context of everything else. But if we're going small sample size, this might be the best stretch of Rockies baseball this season.
Is this the happiest you've been all season? Like this last six game set? Is this the most you've smiled?
Oh, for watching the Rockies, absolutely, because it just seems like, as everything that's been tough, and there's a lot of, as frustrating as it's been to be a Rockies fan and watching the team time and time, and the Rockies have been, it's been the kind of thing you got to make, help a little spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down when you kind of talk about the Rockies have been playing a lot more competitive baseball of late, but you can only say that so many times when your team's got 74 losses or 75 losses, wherever they're at this point. It just starts to run in the mill, or it's just like, listen, I can't just keep focusing in on the close losses. That's not what I want to. That's not good enough for me. So this series against, again, the Rockies' strength of schedule overall has been very tough. Not only their division, but just the way the schedule is lined up. But with the Twins, the Cardinals, and now going to play Baltimore and the Guardians on the road, Rockies on the road, that's a whole other factor. But these are teams that haven't performed up to what most people would say they're capable of, or what they thought they would be this year. And this was now, at least in half of the series that they've played against these teams, they've won them. They won them at home, and they beat these teams that the Rockies changed the narrative about these teams heading into the trade deadline. The Cardinals are floating, are still back that right around that 500 mark. The Twins dropping that series. So the Rockies did put some pressure on. So and it's just been enjoyable baseball, scoring runs. And the first game was a little bit of frustration because it was the big Rockies problem not scoring with runners in scoring position, but the Rockies have been in games more frequently, whereas there was a lot of times in the start of the season, you 3-run lead, done. Put a fork in them, like home or away. So it's really cool to see. I think you are starting to see growth from some Rockies players. Now, long way to go. And we're talking about repetitions, not only throughout the rest of this year, but recreating it down the line and developing these players into good ball players, good everyday ball players. Those are still question marks, but absolutely, this has easily been the most fun we've had watching Rockies baseball this year, especially because going into the break, the Rockies, had a little bit of a frustrating end to that first half where they were playing those good close games, playing the better ball, but kind of fizzled out. So for them to come out and win the first, win this home series, have a phenomenal homestand, have a great week of baseball, you'll take that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it has to feel good too that, in a season that's been so disappointing because even though it's a rebuild going on in Colorado, you never want to be this low. You don't want to have this type of season going on where it's just like, gosh, we're on pace to set a record for futility. That's not what you're looking for. And to see them play well and have kind of like the glimmer of hope, be like, see, this is what we're talking about. This is progress and this is going in the right direction. I completely understand how that's got to feel real good for Rockies fans. On the flip side, the Cardinal fans are tearing their hair out if they have any left after what they've seen over the first 6 games since the All-Star break ended, because they go 1-5. They get swept in Arizona, and then they come to Colorado where the talk is, and it's expected, where they're like, you should win this series. It's the Rockies. They had 24 wins coming into the series. Like, you're supposed to go in there and win. And to come away not only losing the series, but then to get blanked in the final game by, and no offense to Tanner Gordon, but who is Tanner Gordon to anybody in St. Louis? They don't know who that guy is. And to see him just dominate the offense. And also, I don't know, I'm sure you are aware of this because you're a very smart person, but they snapped the no shutouts, consecutive no shutouts.
220 games.
220
in between. And just kind of to piggyback off that, what was so impressive, that's like Coors 2. And the Cardinals were hitting the ball. Like, the Cardinals were putting the ball in play, setting up opportunities. And of course, they have a guy that's very familiar and hitting there. I know the offense and the hitting isn't his biggest strength anymore there in Arenado, but this was a team that was getting guys on base and certainly creating opportunities. But the Rockies bullpen has been, when you're looking at it, something that you can call their strength. The Rockies bullpen has been that. But man, I think you can't say enough good things about the 2 youngsters for the Rockies starters there, especially with the backdrop of the Cardinals starters there. I think that was the most surprising thing. And I think, if I can ask, has that been one of the main issues with the Cardinals this year, is starting pitching? Because I wasn't blown away with a lot of these guys, even with, I think in the first game, there was some success there.
Yeah, McGreevy is a guy that former first-round pick, and he has just been kind of wasting away in Memphis. Came up last year, started to show signs of being something that should be in the rotation for the big league club. They didn't have a spot for him. They had all these veterans, and normally a pitching staff goes through some injury issues. It very rarely does you have the same 5 dudes who were in there day in, day out the whole season. And oddly enough, that is what the Cardinals have had. You've had Sonny Gray, Matthew Liberatore, Andre Palante, who you saw on Wednesday, Eric Fetty, and then Miles Michaelis, and all of them have answered the bell each and every time that they've had their name called. So there's been no room for Michael McGreevy, even though most of these guys are not pitching all that well. But the Cardinals are like, well, what do you want us to do? Like, we've got these guys. We're still winning games to an extent. Things haven't gone so well here, but it was at the end of June, they were 2.5 back of the Cubs in the Central. So it wasn't like the season was all that bad. And then in the last month, it has just fallen apart, and the starting pitching has been the biggest cause of that. One of those names being Eric Fetty, who got the start in Tuesday's game. He is no longer a St. Louis Cardinal. That was a big move ahead of the game on Wednesday. They designated Eric Fetty for assignment, acquired at the deadline last year in a 3-team trade with the Dodgers and the White Sox. The Cardinals end up being the biggest loser in this one because Tommy Edman, who's not having a great year, and that's kind of the narrative here for Cardinals fans. They're like, oh my gosh, we gave up Tommy Edman because he was so good in the playoffs last year. he's really not doing all that much for the Dodgers this year. He's having a tough season. So, but he was amazing last year, and that's what everybody remembers. World Series championship, he shined. He was awesome, right? White Sox get a bunch of prospects, including Miguel Vargas, who's having a solid year with Chicago. And then the Cardinals get Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham. Pham was off the team before last season even ended, and now Fetty is gone, and you've got nothing to show for it. A trade that kind of felt okay on paper last year because it was something the Cardinals needed. They needed somebody to face left-handed pitching. They needed another starter. Tommy Edman hadn't played the whole year because of the wrist injury, and it didn't work. And it's yet another deal that the fans will look back on, and they're going to shake their heads and shake their fists and say, how dare you? You guys are terrible at this. So they're going to be upset about this for a while. So not happy times going on with the St. Louis Cardinals right now. And trade deadline. Speaking of trades, it's coming up here very, very soon. Both of our teams are going to be involved in this trade deadline. Sadly, we're going to be on the wrong side of it, I think, again this year. So we're going to talk about that. We'll discuss what our two teams have to offer other teams and who we think might go, who should stay. We'll get into all of that coming up on this crossover episode of Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Rockies. Today's episode is being brought to you by Gameday Hue. Now, these guys were super awesome and hooked us up with some gear, and it's fantastic. We each got, I know, Paul, you got a hat. I got the hat. We got the Cardinals and the Rockies colors on them. We're trying to put them up on the camera if you're watching on YouTube right now. Like, these hit the mark because these are our team colors, and they go with the stuff that we wear out on the golf course. If you are golfing, Gameday Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. Okay, no giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the golf course, obviously, or basically anywhere in between. Because, you know, I'll rock these on the golf course, because it's subtle, it's stylish, and you still get to rep your team. I got a St. Louis Cardinals golf bag, shocking, and it matches perfectly with what I do. I'm very metro when it comes to that stuff. I like everything to match. So the hat pairs perfectly with my usual gear, normally the golf shorts, the polos, but also my bag. But you don't have to strictly wear it on a golf course. Like, you can wear this stuff to tailgates, barbecues, obviously to a game that you're going to, or just when you're out running errands. You just grab it off the shelf and whoop, you're on, you're ready to go, and you're going to get compliments on them, I guarantee. And it's not just hats. We've also got their split shade gloves made for the golf course as well. They're a perfect gift for the fan who has everything but needs something else, and you can get them in any team colors. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com, code MLB15. Thanks again for making Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Rockies your first listen every day. Feedback always welcome and encouraged. You can obviously hit us both up on X. We're on there. You can write to us on our YouTube pages, TikTok, Instagram, anything you got to say, good or bad. It's always welcome and encouraged. We love speaking with the fans. Neither one of our teams appear to be headed for postseason play this year. I will concede that the Rockies are not going to make the playoffs. Cardinals, as you mentioned, still over 500. They're 52-51 despite losing this season. But after that 1-5 road trip to start the second half, their fate, at least in my eyes, is all but sealed. It would take a lot to push this team to the level that some of these other teams are at to actually make the playoffs and then win when you get to the playoffs. So we're in sell mode in St. Louis. They do have some pieces that should garner some attention, but I'm a little nervous at what the return is going to be for some of these guys, because the Cardinals are well known for thinking a little too highly of the guys that they have in-house and maybe, thinking that they're a little bit better than they are. But there's names like Ryan Helsley, Phil Maytime, Steven Matz. They're all on expiring contracts, and teams are always looking for bullpen help when it comes to the trade deadline. You mentioned Nolan Arenado. Almost got traded this offseason to the Houston Astros, vetoed that, used his no-trade clause. Wilson Contreras, Sonny Gray, again, they all have no-trade clauses, so to be moved they would have to waive those. And there hasn't been the sense that any of them are all that eager to actually get up and move here at the trade deadline. Maybe in the offseason, things are a little bit different. But as of right now, we haven't heard that any of them have said, yes, go ahead and shop us. But Paul, when you hear those names, when I give you the names Ryan Helsley, Maton, Matz, on a level of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what level of excitement do you feel those names can conjure up? And be honest, don't hold back, because the audience needs to know what these guys are worth to other people outside of the Cardinal family.
Again, I think the hardest thing about evaluating the trade deadline, and I can totally relate to you on, hey, there are players that should be traded, but what is the haul? And I think the Rockies are in that same exact situation when it comes to a lot of guys. So I don't think bullpen arms excite a lot of people. You know, for me, I some of those names I'll probably need to brush up and refamiliarize myself with and everything like that, especially when you're talking about bullpen pieces from a team that's right around 500. Because how much can you spin that story into, hey, look at the numbers? That's what Jake Bird is a perfect example for the Rockies here. Look at the numbers, look at the splits, look at the things. He's also on a team that was the worst team in baseball history in the first half. Like, there's all of that too. And so I think when you're talking about those type of deals, I don't think they move the needle for a lot of teams. And you really don't know how the impact of those arms will be until your team trades for them, brings them on, and they're pitching big moments for you in the second half of the season. I think those ones, in terms of building up that excitement. But the big one has to be Arenado. I mean, this has to, I mean, when you're talking about the interest, especially for Rockies fans, I mean, did we just watch the last time of Nolan Arenado playing third base for the Cardinals and opening up a different chapter in the Arenado storybook? Maybe one that kind of helps Rockies fans move on a little bit, especially where, of course, it's a Gomber versus Cardinals game at Coors Field to open this series up.
And they beat them.
Right, exactly. And you're mentioning, a team highly valuing who they have in-house, pulling off trades that didn't necessarily work out for them. There's a lot of connections between these two teams, and that's kind of, it's surprising to hear that that's kind of the rep the Cardinals have when you think about the legacy of the Cardinals organization and compare it to the Rockies organization. The Rockies are often looked at as a mess, unorganized, not effective at trades, not active at trade deadlines. Whereas it's the Cardinals, where this is a team that doesn't lose. This is a team that doesn't, the status quo is not, they would not allow back-to-back 100-loss seasons, let alone 3, and be on pace to be the worst team ever. So I guess I know I kind of went around your question, but I think that's really truly, like, when you're talking about the needle moving deals, that's not going to happen with these two teams. You're going to see on MLB Network or whatever, for, on the bottom ticker, it'll say Cardinals trade, yada, 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 from the bullpen. Same with the Rockies, because there's not a lot of people that are going to really move headlines. If Arenado gets traded, that makes headlines, and I think that's huge. And I don't know, if I'm Nolan Arenado and Rockies, people know I'm a big Arenado fan. The jersey hanging in the closet's an Aaron is a 28. I'd want to go. He's barely played in the playoffs. The decline is real. Are you really? I mean, I'd be shocked to know about what we've heard about Nolan, what you guys have seen Nolan for years now. We had Nolan for years. That would be a complete change in that fiery competitive attitude to not want to go be a Yankee for the second half of the season and go hit at that ballpark. Or I'm just saying Yankees, for example, one of the many teams that need a third baseman at this point in the year. So that's the one that would be a big one, especially for us Rockies fans to watch, especially considering maybe what the haul might be. And the fact that I believe the Rockies are still paying part of the Arenado contract or just finished up that. So there's also that, the Rockies paying for that type of stuff. So for me, those are the big needle movers. And like I said, for the Rockies there, a lot of their names, Ryan McMahon probably being the biggest name that could be moved for the Rockies. Herman Marquez, he just went on the IL, though. That's why Tanner Gordon pitched today. I don't think those are going to be game changers. But Ryan McMahon could be a difference maker for a team come late in the season, and people would start to know the name then.
Yeah, the thing with Arenado, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I just get this sense for him that bouncing to a new city and stuff in the middle of the year, it just doesn't feel like something he wants to do. Like, if he got a chance to move in the offseason, which why I was shocked when he didn't take the deal and go to the Houston Astros. And then we thought, oh, what, he doesn't like Houston? What's the problem? He just wasn't sure where their trajectory was going because they were still, the Alex Bregman talk was still going on. So he was like, I don't know what my role, and he's like, he wasn't sure. So it just feels like to me that it's something that he might be more inclined to do in the off season, where he can talk with his wife and he's got the kids and he can be like, all right, we're going to make this move together and this is something we want to do, because he holds all the power. He can say no to any deal that the Cardinals come across. It doesn't matter how good it is for St. Louis. He'd be like, no, I don't want to go there and I'm not going to go there. So he can put his foot down on that. But yeah, the other one, like, Ryan Helsley, NL reliever of the year, and nobody talks about him. And that was what was so shocking this offseason, is because he had that title and then he had this aura that like, oh, this guy's really good. And then they didn't trade him this offseason. They didn't take advantage of it. Now his stock has come down because he hasn't been nearly as good as he was last year, and it's going to cost them.
Ryan McMahon, an all-star last year. I'm right there with you, where it's just like, you got to strike when the iron is hot with these players that are good players. I've been very critical of Ryan McMahon this year because he's kind of the guy, the main veteran guy that we're looking for and been waiting for that breakout. But when you have an opportunity to trade them, when they're at, Elias Diaz is another great example for the Rockies a couple years ago, all-star MVP, literally just won the all-star game, was having a great season as a catcher. Instead, he gets DFA'd. So, I mean, it's just like, I don't think those, those awards, how much do they, does it matter if the Rockies, if they shop Brenton Doyle, if he's with, or does Gold Glove really change and move a needle when it comes to shopping and trades like that? I wonder if those just kind of don't have the same shine as they do to us fans.
Yeah, it's certainly something that fans don't really think about as much, because they hear it. Like you said, you hear Nolan Arenado's name and you're like, ooh, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. We could get so much in return. No, not really. Not at this point in his career. Not with that contract. The Cardinals are going to have to eat a buttload of money on that one to move him, because nobody else is going to need somebody who is a declining star, even though he has been awesome over at third base. Like, he still makes the plays and it's really fun to watch. And I know Colorado fans miss having that guy down there, but yeah, the offense it's just not there anymore. And it's sad. And it's made a lot of us sad in St. Louis. In fact, I got this picture. I'm going to put this up on the screen on YouTube. This is what the Cardinals feel like after today's loss. Look at this. Ben Affleck in the Cardinals jersey, smoking a cig outside his spot there. And I think that was in New York at one point. But yeah, it's a sad time. It's a sad time because the Cardinals, they're not going to get a whole lot from these guys that are going to be available at the trade deadline. And it's not going to move the needle. It's not going to make these guys all of a sudden contenders for next year. And it's going to be really disappointing to Cardinal fans. And with Colorado fans, though, outside of McMahon, is there anybody else that you think maybe on the bubble of getting moved that might shock you, that might be in discussions of getting moved at this deadline?
There's been some rumors about Mickey Moniak, and that's just some kind of rumblings about him having
1 year deal, right? He's on 1 year deal.
The Rockies picked him up after being either DFA'd or waived by the Angels. This series, he just set a career best in home runs. But I also wonder, it's just like, how many teams look at that and say Coors Field, But when Mickey Moniak has hit the ball this year, and he's done that more successfully than most times in his career due to a lot more consistent playing time, it's extra base hits, it's big hits. He's able to hit the ball and hit the heck out of the ball. I mean, he blasted that home run in this series. He's really good there. And the Rockies have plenty of bullpen options. You could take Herget is an example. We saw him in Game 3 here. Jake Bird, I've mentioned a couple of times. Tyler Kinley, and it depends on if the Rockies want to dip into some of the younger arms of their bullpen. Seth Alvarez, Victor Vodnik. The Rockies,
that's a name that the Halverson with the triple digits, that's always enticing to other teams. Would that be somebody that might get shipped out?
Absolutely. And so it's all possible, but it all comes down to the question, and we're talking about the Colorado Rockies here. So there's plenty of options, and I think the Rockies need to be moving on from Ryan McMahon and Herman Marquez. Herman Marquez will be a free agent at the end of the year. Just went on the IL in his first full season back from Tommy John with some shoulder inflammation. But all the report, no structural damage. Just as kind of, it seems like it's a sign of, hey, this is the first season that this guy's had back. He threw 23 innings the last time he was in the majors. Now he's up to, throwing close to that 100 inning mark and stuff like that. So this is more of a let it chill type of thing. Nothing major. So if you're a Rockies veteran, you should be and the Rockies are getting calls about you. The Rockies should be listening to them, because what do you have to lose? What's the record thing? I am not rooting to be the worst team ever. I had a conversation on my show kind of talking about should Rockies fans be quote unquote rooting for them to lose and be the worst team ever. It's like, I don't want to have that moniker. The Rockies have enough bad. Look in the history books in the bad columns, the worst records that you want. And the Rockies already hold plenty of those.
We got enough.
Let's not take the record of worst baseball team ever from a team that only had to hold it for a year. Talk about getting let off the hook in Chicago out there. They are rooting for sure for this, and so if anybody and everybody should be available for the Colorado Rockies, if we're really being honest, because the Rockies are multiple years out from contention. It's just a matter of who are the guys that they really believe in and think are going to be part of this rebuild and part of this process, and who isn't. And will the Rockies actually be a big seller like we hope that they are in a season that's lost?
Yeah. And just so you know, the Cardinals have been very giving to not only you guys for this series, but they also dropped the series to the 24 White Sox as well. They were only the Nationals and the Cardinals lost series to both of these teams. So Cardinals doing work, trying to help everybody out, not feel so bad about themselves. Coming up, where do these teams go from here? What's on tap next for the Rockies and for the Cardinals? That's coming up next on this crossover episode of Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Rockies. Ever wish managing your money felt easier with Monarch Money? It can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. And it's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, it's more than a budgeting app, and you know this. It's a complete financial command center. It's going to allow you to track all your accounts, your investments, and do your spending. And it's all in one place. Like, that's the worst thing, is to be bouncing around trying to keep up with things. Why can't it all be together? Monarch Money makes that happen. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Buying things online, it adds up quickly. We know this. Groceries, toiletries, pet supplies, food delivery, things for vacations. We just went cabrewing the other day. It costs money, and it's easy to just hit that checkout button and be on the move. But you might not realize how much money is actually going out at that point, and that can be dangerous. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Thanks again for making Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Rockies your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked on MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find MLB Game Night on the Locked on MLB YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcast. So Rockies win back-to-back series. They snap the no-shutout streak. Whose life are they about to ruin next, Paul, with this streaking that they're going on?
Well, it's the road. So let's, this is we know the Rockies are not always, but the Rockies haven't been great at home either. Again, like I mentioned, first time winning a series at home this year. So home or away.
They're blowing up the narrative, Paul. They're blowing it out of the water.
Hey, I'm all for it. Like I said, that would be actually, this is now, I actually kind of really love the teams that the Rockies are matched up with leading into the trade deadline, because it just is such a fascinating look at a bunch of teams that are on the bubble, and the Rockies having a direct influence on what they're going to do. They head to Baltimore next. Baltimore, obviously sellers. We know for a fact they're selling. We know they're out of the picture. Their division is too good. But this is now an opportunity for the Rockies to go out on the road and beat a struggling team. They've won. The Rockies did go out and beat. It's kind of surprising to say this, because now this is actually kind of a nice series win, where they go out and they sweep the Marlins in Miami, which was great. So the Rockies have had some moments where they've kind of shown off a little bit, but this is the young team navigating the one of the biggest challenges of Rockies history, which is going from Coors to the road. It's something that they've always struggled with. So that'd be a great moment, a growth moment to see. And then the Rockies leading into the trade deadline got the Guardians, which a fascinating team going into the deadline as well. 3 out of the 4 teams the Rockies are playing, their trade deadline totally influenced by the Colorado Rockies. If they with winning those two out of these 3 series so far, if they are able to beat Cleveland on the eve of the trade deadline, that is going to be a really, really interesting development for what does that team do at the deadline? What do the Guardians consider? And when you're looking at the Rockies, if they are able to continue the winning or keep it close or get a couple of these games, win one of the 2 series, you're going to be close to your 30 games. And that means that you're getting closer and closer to not being the worst team in baseball history. So when you have these opportunities to go up against teams that are, I like to say more middling, struggling also as well, maybe bad stretch, but these are teams that are around or at 500. Plenty of winning baseball in there, as in those teams, but also they're not indestructible because the Rockies are going to have the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, the Giants, the Padres, throughout the rest of the season sprinkled in there with their division matchups. So anytime you can ride these waves like this, it's going to be a good time for them if they're able to keep this up. So I think that's the thing. I think the main thing I'm watching for, other than just what are the Rockies going to do at the deadline, is how are the Rockies influencing these teams at the deadline and the impact of the Rockies winning a couple ball games.
Yeah, playing spoiler. I mean, they've certainly affected. If it wasn't what Arizona just did to the Cardinals, it's certainly what the Rockies just did to the Cardinals. It said, yeah, we're probably out of this thing, and there's no teetering on the fence anymore. It's time to really consider. I don't want to say blowing things up because that's not what they're going to do. Because again, the Cardinals are a very young team. It's just that some of these veteran pieces, it's time to start shopping a little more with purpose at this point. Coming up next for the Cardinals, they're going home. The Padres, where they have been a much better team this year, most teams are, but the Padres are coming in. Obviously, the Padres got a lot to play for right now. They are constantly amongst rumors for getting people known to be very aggressive at the deadline year in and year out. So they're coming in for 4 games. Could be a former Cardinal could be on their roster when it's all said and done, because there's been a lot of news and rumors swirling about Marcell Ozuna from the Atlanta Braves coming over to San Diego. So those trade rumors have been floating around for a while. When you look at the playoff picture, well, then they got the Marlins after that, who have been playing very, very well. So they've also been up for, people have wanted former Cardinal Sandy Alcantara. They've been talking about Edward Cabrera. There's some pieces that people wanted to pluck off Miami. I've been on the side of saying Miami needs to just not sell for once and then just build around these dudes. Like, I don't think you're going to get fair value for what Sandy Alcantara should be. He's had a tough year coming back from the arm surgery. So if I'm them, unless it's a king's ransom, I'm not moving any of these dudes, and I'm trying to win ball games in 2026. But what are the teams in your eyes right now that you think are the contenders and the pretenders as far as going to the playoffs? Is there anybody like the Giants? Do you feel like they're in your division? You've seen them. Do you feel like they have enough to get over the hump and get into this playoffs, or are they somebody that needs to start thinking about next year?
This is solely a personal bias thing for the Giants. I will never count them out until they're out. They are one of the weirdest baseball teams ever because, again, they'll have a quiet, nothing happens off season or whatever, and then they'll go and win 114 games or whatever they were against the Dodgers there a couple of years ago. That's how they win the World Series. I know they got some problems, but they could easily be a team that does a couple of swaps, does a couple of changes, and could be right back in it. Granted, I think the Giants, and this also goes for Arizona too. The NL West is not where you want to be in a team, and even the NL Central. I'm a notorious Central Division hater when it comes to if I say if the Rockies were in either one of the Central divisions, their history would be very different about what they would be looked at on there. So, but you can't say that about the National League Central this year when you're looking at 2 great teams there in Milwaukee and Chicago. I think when you're asking about pretenders, it's not do I think they're pretenders in making the playoffs, but I really would like to see a Brewers. I know it kind of feels tough for Cardinals fans, but I want to see these teams that have strong regular seasons but fizzle out in the playoffs actually go through and pull through with a strong finish
through that problem for once.
Great. Brewers make the playoffs. What are they going to do unless they're playing the Rockies in the opening round? They're going to lose in the opening round there. And it runs its course. I like when the Guardian, a team like the Guardians is going deep. I like that they're, I'm also big on, I know they're not an underdog this year, but I think the Tigers are a fascinating story and it's like a great team to watch. So I'm just kind of more hoping that these teams that are really establishing themselves as solid clubs can follow through in the postseason and make it a little bit more entertaining, because I'd like to see the Blue Jays be the AL East representative late. I'd like to see the Mariners, make some noise late and make some additions at the trade deadline and upset Houston in the postseason. And let's get some interesting teams in there, because I don't really want to watch Houston and the Dodgers and stuff like that, deep in the playoffs, and even the Phillies too, it's like, I don't necessarily want to watch that. It's all great baseball, mind you. It's the best players doing the best things, but I'd love to see those type of teams make that run later in the year.
And I think it also gives, markets like ours some hope that if you don't go out and spend $400-500 million on some star players, that you can build a solid team that wins baseball games together. Milwaukee's doing it. Like you mentioned, the Tigers have been able to do it. The Tampa Bay Rays constantly seem to be hanging around, even when you're like, I don't even know anybody on their roster. Like, they just are able to pull these guys together and still win ball games as a team. So I think that's the direction the Cardinals are trying to go into. They realize that we don't want to spend that kind of money on what it would cost to pull a free agent that's a superstar into St. Louis. And so now it's like, well, you got to grow your own, and that's how you do it. And they're kind of following those blueprints. So to see those teams, like you mentioned, Cleveland as well, those are the types of teams that, we root for, because they're kind of the underdogs, because they don't have the payroll and the means, or at least don't use the means that are available to them to buy these guys. And I think that's good for all of baseball, to see where you've got the major markets with the superstars, but you also got the mid markets and you got the small markets, and they're all going to meet, kind of like March Madness in a way. They're all going to meet and then let it all play out on the field. So sadly, it won't be our teams probably being a part of that. Maybe next year, right? We always got next year. So anywho, Paul, I appreciate you taking time out and doing this crossover together. And we want to thank you guys for being a part of it as well. Make sure you guys are following Paul and Locked On Rockies, of course, as Locked On Cardinals and myself. If you haven't already, follow us on X, subscribe on YouTube, help both of our channels grow and stuff. Instagram, TikTok, we're all over the place. So look for Paul Holden and look for Locked On Rockies, as well as JD Haffern and Locked On Cardinals. Thank you for being part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.